Hi, I'm Matt Baxley. You might know me as Matt Baxley from the internet. And I'm here at Behringer at the Music Tribe Experience Center here in Chatsworth, California, demonstrating this wonderful new gear from Behringer. This is the Odyssey. The Behringer Odyssey is a new iteration on the classic ARP Odyssey and features a lot of really exciting additions. So the ARP Odyssey is an instrument that I wanted ever since I found out what they were when I was a young kid, and it took until Korg reissued theirs for me to finally get my hands on my own one, and it became my main gigging instrument, playing in a band where I play bass on keyboards with my left hand, and the Odyssey is my bass machine. Everything that all of the revisions and iterations that Korg did on theirs are present here as well. So you got all three of the filters. You've got the Mark I 2-pole style filter. You've got the 4-pole 4035, which is like the Moog style filter, and then you have the 4075, which is the post-lawsuit filter. That's the Mark III Odyssey filter. So you have all three here, just as the Korg one. And the main additions that we have here is a sequencer that allows us to have 8 banks of 8 sequences each. So for a total of 64 sequences, they could be up to 32 steps long. And this sequencer is very advanced. You could add accent per step. You can add ratcheting per step. Gate time and portamento time are per step. So it's a very robust sequencer. And of course also we have the Clark Technic effects section, which has been added. So you have built-in effects. So what I normally do is I have a very kind of specific patch that I use. I'll have a sawtooth here. Okay. So I'll have a sawtooth there. To use the sample and hold in keyboard trig mode, so that each new note gives you a slightly different cutoff of the filter. So it enables you to do this. So I'll do that. Then I'll have. And now I can add second oscillator and get Stevie Wonder type tones. When the Odyssey first came out, it had a big knob for pitch that had a big dead zone in the center, so that you could get it back to pitch if you used it to pitch bend up or down. Obviously, the limitation there was that there's no way to add vibrato, which is typically what people will do with a modulation wheel, but there was no modulation wheel. So they came up with what they call the proportional pitch control. And that's here, and basically you have a button to go flat, and a button to go sharp. And the harder you press, the more effect you get, and then the one in the middle adds modulation. And the way it works is it's sort of a pressure gradient, so that toward the edges of the proportional pitch pads, you can get a little bit less effect, so you don't, not so much, wild. And they never feel the same. I've never played two of these that had the exact same feel. I like to use it like this. So one of the things that's been added here is effects, digital effects from Clark Technic, and there are 35 different effects. And one thing that's very nice about this is that each of the effects, the settings are persistent. So if I go through and like here's a gated reverb, and if I go through and set the parameters like I want, and then I go to the next thing, which is an echo, and I go back to my gated reverb, my settings are persistent. So there is kind of technically one preset per effect, and those will stay after you power the unit off or anything. A lot of questions that people have asked are, is it going to be Midi Syncable? The sequencer absolutely is Midi Syncable and works very well over Midi Sync. The effects are not Midi Syncable, but they do all have a BPM parameter that you can set to a specific BPM. There's a lot going on back here that wasn't maybe present on every iteration of the Odyssey. These were like common mods that were added, and things that Core added on theirs that were. You would find this on the Mark III Odyssey. So there is an XLR balanced output as well as a 1/4-inch output, and there are CV gate and trig in and out, which enables you to do some pretty fun little, I'm gonna borrow this for a second. You can do some pretty fun little tricks with these. If you connect the CV in to the CV out, you can defeat the duophonic, because the way this works is that they enabled you to have 2 notes at once instead of just monophonic lines. You can actually play 2 notes like this. So, you can play intervals, and the way that works is oscillator 1 is low note priority and oscillator 2 is high note priority. So to defeat that functionality, all you have to do is just simply connect the CV out back to the CV in, and it puts them both in low note priority. So now, and so now, it's much more usable as a lead synthesizer. And then there's another thing that you can do to defeat the legato functionality by connecting the gate output to the trigger input. So, I mean, there's little things that you can do that maybe you couldn't do on a lot of vintage Odysseys except for the later models. And as I said before, everything that was added in the reissue has also been added here, plus more. Oh, let's talk about the build quality. There's never been an Odyssey, to my knowledge, that was a fully metal chassis. Metal top, but usually a plastic surround. This is fully steel. This is like really high quality, and it does add a bit of weight, but this thing is going to survive the rigors of touring, I guarantee you.